At first, I convinced myself I was imagining it, that stress and exhaustion were making me paranoid. But doubt is like a slow poison, seeping into everything, tainting even the moments that should have been happy. I had tried to ignore it. I told myself that after years together, it was natural for things to change, that maybe I'd been distant, too buried in my work to notice her slipping away. But the truth had a way of surfacing. The moment that shattered my illusions came on an ordinary Tuesday evening. She had claimed she was meeting friends for dinner, but when I drove past the restaurant, she wasn't there. Instead, I found her car parked outside the Hilton, tucked neatly in the shadow of the building. I sat in my own car across the street, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was real. That night, I didn't confront her. I went home, poured a glass of whiskey, and stared at the wedding photos still hanging in our apartment. The woman in those pictures, the one laughing in a white dress, holding my hand like she never wanted to let go. Was she ever real? Or had I just been too blind to see what was coming? I needed proof, cold, undeniable proof, and once I had it, I needed a plan. Not just for revenge, not for anger, but for closure, for an ending I could control. It was a Thursday night, just past 9, when I found myself standing outside the Hilton in downtown Albany, not far from the Capitol. I wasn't there as a guest. I had no intention of staying. I was there for one reason: to find my wife. She was upstairs with her boyfriend, completely unaware that I'd known about their affair for months. The betrayal had been eating away at me every single day. Tonight, I was finally ready to do something about it. For a long time, I wrestled with my next move. A man has his limits. At first, I tried to ignore it, hoping it would burn out on its own. But it didn't. Diana continued seeing Darren Ranger, all while acting like the perfect wife. We talked about our future as if everything was fine, but I knew the truth. It was all a performance. Every word, every smile, every touch, none of it was real. I kept replaying it all in my head, searching for the moment I lost her. Had I been too distant? Was I not enough? I even tried to convince myself to just let it go, to pretend I didn't know. Maybe, just maybe, she'd come back to me. But deep down, I knew better. Once trust is broken like that, there's no repairing it. I waited for signs that she would stop, that she would choose me again. She never did. So I made a decision. It took time to fully accept it. I worked grueling shifts, 18 hours straight, sometimes several days in a row. Maybe that's why she strayed. Maybe my exhaustion had turned me into a ghost in my own home. But if that were the case, why didn't she just tell me? Why lie? Why pretend to love me while sneaking off with someone else? Why not just ask for a divorce like an adult? Too many questions, no answers. So I formed a plan. Not perfect, but good enough. I wasn't there to start a fight. I wasn't there to beat Darren to a pulp no matter how much I wanted to. My lawyer had warned me. Violence would only land me in jail. No, I had something different in mind. I was there to end things on my terms, to show Diana exactly what betrayal felt like. My name is David Walters, 31, born and raised in Albany. I used to be an ER doctor until recently. I took a leave of absence, burned out from the relentless pressure of my job. My doctor advised me to step back before stress eliminated me. I didn't tell Diana because, honestly, I knew she wouldn't care. I had sacrificed everything, my time, my health, my sanity, while she was off playing house with another man. Diana Walters, my wife, is 30. She works at a national bank here in town. We share a 2-bedroom apartment near the hospital. No kids, thank God. She's the kind of woman who turns heads everywhere she goes. Tall, with long, thick brunette hair. Hard to miss. We met in college during my second year. I was a science major forced to take an English class for technical reading. I didn't care much about the material, but I cared about her. I asked her out, and from there, things fell into place. At least that's how I thought our story went. After graduation, we moved in together. 2 years later, we got married, right after I finished med school. I was lucky. My parents covered my tuition, so I started my career debt-free. Yeah, I know, sounds like an easy ride. But I worked every summer for my dad's construction company, earning minimum wage just like everyone else. I wasn't handed anything. Now I spent my life working 18-hour shifts in a chaotic ER, constantly on call. But that's not why you're here. You want to know what happened at the Hilton, how I ended up standing in that lobby staring at the elevator doors. Well, let me take you there. I had known about Diana's affair for a while. Why didn't I act sooner? Fair question. I went through every stage, denial, anger, bargaining, before I made my decision. At first, I refused to believe it. We were supposed to be a team, building a future together. Then I learned the truth. We had talked about starting a family, picked out baby names, even toured houses in the suburbs. We had a savings account for a down payment and maternity leave. Financially, we were in a solid place. I made $120,000 last year, paid my taxes, even sent my parents $10,000. Diana brought in $80,000. And in just a few years, my salary would have tripled. We had a plan. Or at least, I thought we did. I discovered the affair by accident. One of the nurses at the hospital, Rhonda, spotted Diana at a restaurant downtown. She'd met Diana once at a Christmas party and recognized her instantly. She also recognized the man sitting across from her, Darren Ranger. His landscaping company had done work for her husband. Small world. A few nights later, I watched them walk into the Hilton together, heading toward the elevators. I followed at a distance, noting the number where the elevator stopped, 12th floor. I glanced at my watch. The plan I had been rehearsing in my head was about to play out. It was time to take control. I walked up to the front desk and asked to call Darren Ranger's room. Darren, married, father of two, had been cheating on his wife for almost 2 years with mine. When he picked up, I kept my voice calm. "Can I speak to Diana Walters?" A brief pause, then, there's no one here by that name." I didn't hesitate. "Tell her husband is dead. David Walters doesn't exist anymore." I hung up, handed the phone back to the receptionist, and smiled like nothing had happened. For the first time in months, I felt light, free. Outside, I leaned against my motorcycle and waited. It didn't take long. Diana came rushing out, frantic, scanning the street. She didn't see me. She jumped into a cab, no doubt racing home in a panic. As for me, I had already decided. My bags were packed. My 2016 Honda Africa Twin was fueled and ready. I had my route mapped out. New England, then Canada, all the way to the Pacific, before circling back to Albany. 3 or 4 months on the road, alone, to clear my head. Maybe I'd never come back. Maybe I'd join Doctors Without Borders, disappear into the world. Anything was better than this. As I pulled onto the highway, the city lights faded behind me. My past, my marriage, my old life was gone. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't look back.
Oh, God. A call came to Darren's room. Someone said David was gone. My stomach clenched. This couldn't be real. I threw on my clothes, ignoring Darren's questions. My fingers fumbled at the elevator buttons. Outside, I waved down a cab, barely getting my address out. The ride felt endless. I rushed into the apartment. David? Nothing. I searched everywhere. He was gone. On the kitchen table, an envelope with my name. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside, his wedding ring and a note. "Diana, to you I no longer exist. I took what mattered. The rest is yours. Don't look for me. My lawyer will be in touch. Enjoy your life." The paper slipped from my fingers. I never thought he'd find out. It wasn't serious, just a distraction. He worked too much. I was lonely. I assumed we'd move past it, start fresh. But now that future was gone. I dialed his number. Disconnected. His father picked up instead. "He's gone, Diana, and you can go to hell." The call ended. I scanned the apartment. His things, gone. A few trash bags in the kitchen, leftovers. I sank into a chair, staring at the note, the ring. I had destroyed everything. I poured a glass of wine, gripping the stem. How could I ever fix this?
I hadn't traveled much distance. At around 10 p.m., I caught sight of Diana hurrying out of the Hilton and into a cab. She still thought I was working a late-night ER shift, assuming she could sneak off with her boyfriend and return home as if nothing had changed. I fired up my Honda Africa Twin, a powerful 1,000cc machine built for long journeys. I rode with caution. I'd seen too many reckless riders end up in the ER, convinced they were invincible until reality proved them wrong. That wasn't going to be me. I checked into a Holiday Inn Express on the outskirts of town. My only priorities were a meal, a hot shower, and sleep. The Hilton had been the graveyard of my marriage. This place? The first step into a different life.
The next morning, I drove to David's parents' house. His car was there. Maybe he was too. I rang the doorbell. Miriam answered, saw me, and shut the door. I knocked again. After a long pause, John opened it, his usual warmth gone. "What do you want?" he asked coldly. "Please, I need to talk to David. He's gone. Even if I knew where, I wouldn't tell you." "John, we can fix this." He glared. "You cheated and expect forgiveness? Leave. We're done with you." He slammed the door. I sat on the steps, stunned. After a while, I rang again, pressing until he reopened it. "Just tell him to call me," I pleaded. He said nothing. Back at my apartment, a letter was taped to the door. My stomach dropped. David's lawyer, Leanne Collins, had written it. I was off his health insurance, his money was gone from our accounts, and his life insurance now named his parents. The message was clear: no contact. If I wanted a divorce, my lawyer had to go through his. It hit me. David was done. 8 years together, 4 married, and it was over. That weekend, I called everyone. His brother, his friends, even co-workers. No one helped. Desperate, I went to the hospital and ran into Rhonda, the ER nurse who'd seen me with Darren. She invited me over the next day. I declined a drink, needing a clear head. She didn't sugarcoat it. She had told David. She didn't know much about Darren, just that he was married with kids and had done work for her husband. Her face said it all. Pity, disbelief. As we talked, her kids ran in and out. She barely looked at me. When I left, she said, "Everyone at the hospital knows David won't be back anytime soon." That was it. I sat in my car, gripping the wheel, staring blankly ahead. Then I drove, watching her house vanish in my mirror, feeling completely lost.
A month later, I was in Newfoundland, surrounded by wild coastlines, fresh ocean air, and a quiet that finally settled my mind. The people were warm, the food better than expected, and for the first time in ages, I felt free. While riding the Avalon Peninsula, a moose suddenly appeared on the road. I swerved just in time, my heart pounding. After that, I only rode in daylight. One wrong move, and the trip would be over. In Petty Harbor, I stopped for ice cream after visiting Cape Spear. When I returned to my bike, the rear tire was flat. Before I could even think about fixing it, 4 locals had already offered to help. Eventually, I called a tow truck and had the bike taken to St. John's. The city was a pleasant surprise, laid back, welcoming, and full of character. While my bike was in the shop, I checked into a small hotel, enjoying the rare comfort of a real bed and hot shower. At the repair shop, I met Emma Fisher, a German rider crossing Canada before heading to Morocco. She was shipping her bike from St. John's and flying to Casablanca. Tall, confident, and effortlessly cool, she had an energy that drew me in. We hit it off instantly, talking about travel, the road, and the kind of freedom most people never chase. When I found out she had a few days left in town, I asked her to dinner. She said yes. We ate at the Salty Cod, swapping stories late into the night. When I woke up, she was beside me, her dark hair sprawled across my pillow. For the first time since Diana, I felt alive again. The next day, we spent more time together. I told her about my past. She told me about hers. Her plans to ride across Africa intrigued me. Maybe North America wasn't enough. On impulse, I called my dad. A text saying I'm going to Africa wouldn't cut it. We talked for an hour, and for once, he didn't try to stop me. That night, I turned to Emma. "What if I came with you?" Her eyes sparkled. "You serious?" "Yeah, it's time I stopped playing it safe." She smirked. "Your bike is still here." I called the shipping company. They had space. Within hours, my bike was booked. 2 days later, Emma and I boarded a plane. St. John's to Toronto, then Paris, Lisbon, and finally Casablanca.
When David said he wanted to ride through Africa with me, I was surprised, flattered, but also wary. Long journeys aren't just about adventure. They require trust. Before agreeing, I did some digging. Back in Berlin, a friend's husband worked for the German police. I asked if he could check on David Walters from Albany, New York. She got back to me quickly. Everything checked out. David was exactly who he claimed to be, an ER doctor on sabbatical, from a well-known family, recently divorced after nearly 4 years of marriage. His wife had an affair with a married man. No kids. Top of his class in med school. The police even sent a photo to confirm it was definitely him. With that, I felt comfortable traveling with him. Besides, having a doctor on the road? Not a bad idea. But I also knew he wasn't just exploring. He was running. People don't abandon everything unless they're trying to leave something behind. I understood that all too well. When I found out my ex was cheating, I tossed his belongings off our balcony. Message received. Solo travel has its perks. Complete freedom, no compromises. But it can get lonely. I'd been riding for months, covering over 30,000 kilometers while gathering material for a book on motorcycle travel from a woman's perspective. A friend suggested turning my videos into a YouTube channel. Maybe someday. Right now, I had to help David. He wasn't prepared for a trip like this. I found a shop in Casablanca that had most of what he needed and some leads for the rest. Traveling with Dr. David Walters was going to be an experience. Hopefully, I'd be a good guide.
David's parents have shut me out completely. They won't talk to me, won't tell me where he is. Not that I blame them. But now I'm stuck, unsure what to do about my marriage. It's obvious we're finished. Should I be the one to file for divorce? He hasn't yet. What if he changes his mind? Could he ever forgive me? I don't have the answers, but just walking away feels wrong. To make matters worse, Darren cut ties. His wife grew suspicious and he panicked, afraid David had exposed everything. Now I have nothing. I can't keep sitting here staring at these walls. My coworkers go out on Fridays. I'll start joining them. I need to do something.
Casablanca is mesmerizing. A sprawling port city where history and modern life collide. With nearly 4 million people, it's a whirlwind of energy, where ancient architecture stands beside towering glass buildings. The streets pulse with culture, tradition, and a rhythm all their own. While waiting for our bikes to arrive, Emma and I booked a budget hotel. She helped me track down essential gear I hadn't even realized I needed. When we weren't hunting for supplies, we wandered the city, sampled incredible food, and absorbed the lively atmosphere. A storm delayed the ship by 2 days, stretching our stay to 8 nights. Some of the best nights I've ever had.
Almost 2 months have passed, and there's still no word from David. It's finally hitting me. He's gone for good. But was I really the only one at fault? He was never home, always buried in work. I loved him, but I wasn't willing to be invisible. Darren showed up at the bank yesterday. He thinks his wife isn't suspicious anymore and wants to pick up where we left off. When I mentioned David had left, his only response was, well, at least we won't need hotel rooms anymore. That was it. No concern, no questions, just convenience. I wanted David. But without him, maybe Darren is all that's left. Damn it, David.
Morocco was breathtaking, but nothing captivated me quite like Emma. She wasn't just stunning. She was sharp, bold, and completely fearless. She knew more about real adventure riding than I ever could have imagined, and I was learning fast just by watching her. In Casablanca, I stocked up on essentials, fuel, tools, water, and proper riding gear. Adjusting to the local food took some time, but I managed. A letter from my lawyer arrived. Diane hadn't tried to contact me. Maybe she'd accepted it was over, or maybe she was plotting her next move. Either way, it didn't matter. I was exactly where I wanted to be. After leaving Casablanca, Emma and I headed south to Marrakesh. Instead of taking the highway, we followed the coast through El Jadida and Safi. The heat was relentless, but the views made it worth it. We spent the night in El Jadida before turning inland. It was Emma's first time in Morocco, so discovering it together made the trip even better. She switched between 5 languages effortlessly: German, English, French, Spanish, and even some Arabic. And that German accent, absolutely intoxicating. The ride from Casablanca to Marrakesh stretched over 5 days and more than 1,300 kilometers, easily the best journey I'd ever taken. We made a stop in Essaouira before finally reaching Marrakesh, a city where ancient traditions and modern life blended seamlessly. I convinced Emma to stay and explore for 3 days. We found a budget-friendly hotel with secure parking for our bikes. Her BMW was kitted out with premium gear, but my Africa twin had no problem holding its own in the heart of Africa.
More than 2 months have passed, and I've heard nothing from David. I tried reaching out to his family, but they shut me down every time. Even his lawyer had no interest in talking, just asked if I was filing for divorce or sending a letter. I hadn't written one. What would I even say? I miss you even though I betrayed you. I wasn't ready to give up completely. I wanted to talk to him, to see if there was anything left to salvage. He was a good husband, and I always believed he'd make a great father, if we ever got that far. But he disappeared without a word. Just hearing his voice would have meant something. Since he left, I've had a few meaningless hookups. Does that make me a terrible person? Maybe. But what was I supposed to do? He walked away and never looked back. Darren came by the bank again. He thinks his wife has stopped suspecting and wants to pick things up where we left off. When I told him David was gone, his only response was, well, at least we can use your place. That was all I got. I wanted David. But with him gone, maybe Darren was all that was left.
Africa is unlike anywhere I've ever been, yet oddly familiar. No matter where you go, people want the same things: stability, family, a chance at something better. Morocco may be more secure than some places, but at its core Life's struggles are universal. Traveling with Emma has changed me. She's bold, endlessly curious, and constantly pushes me beyond my limits. I grew up in the safety of New York, but this journey is teaching me more than I ever imagined. She's more than just a travel partner. She's an incredible companion in every way. Fierce, passionate, and full of energy, she makes me feel alive in a way I never have before. I'm not going back. And I don't miss Diane.
Traveling across Africa with David has been incredible. He's open-minded, kind, and constantly amazed by how different life is here compared to what he knew back home. After dedicating years to school, his medical career, and marriage, he was left betrayed by the one person he thought he could count on. He truly believed his wife would stand by him, that they were building something solid together. But somewhere along the way, she chose a different path. I don't know her, and I'm not here to take someone's husband, but from what I can tell, she lost him all on her own. We've only been together for a short time, but I already know it'll be tough when he eventually returns to medicine. As for me, I have my own goals, writing a travel guide for women who want to explore the world on motorcycles. It won't make me rich, but it's what I love, and I'm determined to make it happen.
We rode from Marrakesh to Laayoune, covering 900 kilometers along the coast. The landscape was vast, unforgiving, and breathtaking. Every mile demanded focus. An American riding through the desert? Border guards seemed baffled. One even asked why I left the U.S. I just pointed at Emma. He laughed. He understood. We camped twice, always far from the road. The first night I barely slept, every sound keeping me on edge. By the second, exhaustion won. Morning coffee from our camp stove helped. Fuel, water, and supplies were our top priorities. We paid in cash, avoided attention, and stayed cautious. West Africa wasn't necessarily more dangerous than parts of the U.S., but two foreigners on pricey bikes stood out. Protective gear helped in crashes, but it wouldn't stop a weapon. I'd seen enough ER wounds to know that. Western Sahara and Mauritania were unlike anything I'd seen, harsh yet beautiful. Emma, through our helmet intercoms, rattled off facts about the region. She knew her stuff, having worked in travel publishing. She talked a lot, and I loved it. Her voice could make even a road sign sound interesting. Next stop, Dakar, 1,800 kilometers away. 4 brutal days of heat and dust. Emma constantly reminded me to hydrate. My 4-liter Camelback ran dry daily. At times, we had to stop for a break. Once I tried snapping a picture of Emma squatting behind a rock. She caught me, chased me down, and deleted it. We laughed until we couldn't breathe. The road was rough. My bike burned fuel faster than Emma's, so I carried extra. A breakdown cost us 3 hours. Just part of the ride. We camped 3 nights, and even without showers, closeness wasn't an issue. Dirt and sweat were part of the experience. Crossing into Senegal, we avoided Rosso and its infamous bribes, opting for Diama's smoother border crossing. St. Louis was a mix of poverty and beauty, chaos and charm. We found a budget hotel, Hotel de la Poste, near a government building. More security, less hassle. After securing the bikes and washing off layers of dust, I sighed. I need to recover from that desert. Emma smirked. We both need a real bed. For 2 days, we barely left it. When we did, we swam, ate, and did laundry. Having a washing machine felt like luxury. It wasn't a lavish life. Locals owned the nicest homes, not travelers. And everything was cheap, $50 for a room that would cost 4 times that back home. Whenever Wi-Fi allowed, I checked my email. Mostly messages from my parents. But this time, my lawyer had an update. Diane had reached out, asking where I was and when I'd be back. She wasn't getting an answer. My lawyer and parents knew not to tell her anything. She still hadn't filed for divorce. If she didn't soon, I would. Right now, I had no regrets. Emma was incredible. I had no idea where we were headed. But meeting her was the best thing that had ever happened to me.
After 2 restful days at Hotel de la Poste in St. Louis, we set out for Dakar, just 300 kilometers ahead. But soon after leaving the city, everything took a turn. A bus lay overturned on the road. From the scene, it looked like a scooter, crammed with 5 people and a propane tank, had hit a pothole, lost control, and flipped. The bus, trying to avoid it, swerved into a truck and tipped over. We pulled over, ripped off our helmets, and ran. David reached the wreck first. The sight was brutal. The father trapped under the bus, the kids crying and bleeding, their mother unconscious with a propane tank lodged beneath her. David jumped into action. "Emma, get to the kids," he called while checking the mother. Then to the bystanders. See if the father's still alive. I grabbed our first aid kits while David worked, calm and precise, as if he were back in the ER. The father barely moved, and there was no way to lift the bus without help. The police eventually arrived, but their main focus was on keeping traffic moving. When David demanded an ambulance, they stared at him like he'd spoken another language. Here, ambulances weren't a given. After a long wait, 2 finally arrived, and the family was rushed to the hospital. Drained, we collapsed by the roadside, gulping water as the adrenaline faded. David checked on the bus passengers, tending to minor wounds, while the police took the driver away, likely for medical attention. Then a senior officer approached, speaking decent English. He asked David to come to the hospital to provide details on the family's injuries. There was no doctor on duty, just overwhelmed nurses. Without hesitation, David agreed. He was in his element, and I couldn't help but admire how naturally he took control. We followed the police to the hospital. It wasn't modern, but was clean. Inside, a nurse waved us off, saying they were overloaded. David ignored her, grabbed supplies, and started stitching up the kids, instructing me as he worked. I had no experience, but he walked me through it step by step. Blood made me uneasy, but when you have no choice, you push through. Watching David work reminded me who he really was. When others hesitated, he ran toward the crisis. We stayed 3 more days. David spent over 30 hours in the hospital, treating accident sufferers and others who had heard a doctor was in town. I stayed back at the hotel, knowing he wouldn't stop until he had done everything he could. By the time he returned, exhausted, he needed a full night's sleep before we left. Leaving St. Louis was bittersweet. Once David was gone, those people would be without a doctor again.
We continued south to Dakar, Senegal's capital, a city of stark contrasts. Luxury cars weaving through streets packed with scooters, high-end hotels standing beside struggling neighborhoods. Despite the chaos, everything functioned. People were just trying to survive, no different from back home. Maybe I'd never truly seen it before. Diane's betrayal had forced me out of my bubble, pushing me to experience a world beyond what I knew. In Dakar, I suggested we splurge on a beachfront hotel. We'd been splitting costs, but I knew Emma was on a tighter budget. After St. Louis, I need a real break, I told her. I had the money, and it was worth it. For 3 days, we soaked up the sun, played tourists, and let go of everything else. It was perfect. At one point, Emma smiled and said, "Traveling with you makes me happy." "You're saving my life," I admitted. Then reality hit. I checked my email and saw a message from Dr. Laura Johnson at Albany General. "David, we hope you're rested. We agreed on 3 months off, extendable to 6 if mutually agreed. But we need you back ASAP, no later than next month. We're short-staffed. Call me when you get this. Sorry to disrupt your plans, but we need you. Get your A home." Laura, well, crap. I ignored it and kept writing.
The ride south was getting harder, especially knowing David would be heading back to the U.S. soon. We mapped out our next moves. He'd return to New York, and I'd go back to Germany. Then I suggested, what if we ride to Namibia, Windhoek to Cape Town? David was all in. We arranged to fly our bikes from Dakar, and 2 days later, they were loaded onto a cargo plane. The flight to Windhoek was rough, an old plane, young pilots, and turbulence that had us gripping our seats. Landing safely and finding our bikes intact was a relief. Once we had everything sorted, we hit the road. The journey to Cape Town took 5 days, and we both knew it was our last adventure together. We made every moment count. The connection between us deepened. I had fallen in love with David. He was the kind of person who changed everything without even trying. But reality was waiting. I had deadlines to meet, and my savings were running low. From Cape Town, we flew to Frankfurt. David was bound for New York, and I caught a train to Berlin. Before parting, we returned our bikes. Mine to storage, his shipped home. At the airport, neither of us said much. I kissed him softly and whispered, "You need to catch your flight." He held me close and murmured, "I love you." As he walked away, I knew this wasn't the end.
"Dave! Dave!" I heard my brother Paul's voice echo through the hotel lobby. I had just returned after months in Africa. I turned to see him grinning. "Holy crap, man. You look good. Where the hell have you been?" I smirked. "Long story." "How'd you know I was here?" "I didn't," he laughed. "Got a meeting here. Mom and Dad told me you took off, but they never said where. What's going on with Diane?" I sighed. "Another long story. Paul clapped me on the back. Then you're coming over for dinner. You're going to tell me everything. I didn't argue. A home-cooked meal actually sounded good. After a bit of catching up, I told him I needed to check in at the hospital. I knew he'd call Marcy and probably our parents. Diane, doubtful. On the way to the hospital, I passed the building where she worked. Funny how life threw reminders at you when you least wanted them. At the ER, Dr. Johnson greeted me. David, good to see you. She raised an eyebrow. Got a letter from Senegalese officials thanking an American doctor in St. Louis. That you? I nodded. Yeah, scooter accident, bus crash, propane tank, long story. She smirked. Their way of saying thanks, I guess. The ambulance chief updated me on ER changes and handed me my schedule. 12-hour shifts 6 days a week, which could easily turn into 18-hour grinds. But tonight I had something simple to look forward to, dinner with my brother. At Paul and Marcy's, Marcy hugged me tight. David, we missed you. Good to see you too, I said, handing out gifts for the kids. They ran off, leaving the adults to talk. Marcy wasted no time. So, what happened with Diane? I chuckled. Straight to the point, huh? Got a beer? Paul grabbed a couple from the fridge. I took a sip, feeling their eyes on me. What did Mom and Dad tell you? I asked. Marcy frowned. Nothing. I even tried asking Diane, but she just wanted info from me. All we knew was you left work and disappeared. So, what happened? I spent the next half hour giving them the short version, enough to explain without dragging them into the worst of it. After dinner, they asked about my travels. I told them about Africa, about Emma, how we met, the journey, and how she was back in Berlin while I figured out my next steps. I'm looking for a place, settling the divorce, and deciding what's next, I told them. Traveling with Emma had changed me. I couldn't pretend Albany was home anymore. The city reminded me of everything I'd lost, how easily Diane had thrown me away. I didn't say it out loud, but thinking about her still made me feel like a fool. One thing I'd learned in Africa, good women exist. Honest, loyal women. Diane could have just told me she wanted out. Instead, she lied. I took an Uber back to my hotel and got the first good night's sleep in weeks. The next day, I started apartment hunting. Within a few days, I found a small, furnished one-bedroom near the hospital. No furniture shopping, underground parking, decent security. It had everything I needed. Returning to the ER felt strangely natural, like slipping into an old, worn pair of shoes. The same chaos, bangs, crashes, heart attacks. Americans and their unhealthy habits kept us busy. It was hard not to compare it to Africa, where people valued their health because medical care wasn't a given. Here, at least insurance companies were footing the bill. 2 weeks later, I met with my lawyer, Leanne, to finalize the divorce. No property to split. I told her Diane could keep the apartment and everything in it. Papers were ready. I signed them. What surprised me was that Diane hadn't filed first. I figured she'd be eager to move on, but she hadn't done a thing. After the meeting, I realized how quiet my life had become outside work. I needed something to fill the space. With my motorcycle still being shipped, I decided to buy another. After checking out a few dealerships, I landed on a KTM 890 Adventure R. I customized it for both street and trails. Not cheap, but I had the money and I wasn't about to let it sit idle.
A coworker mentioned David was back. Someone at the hospital had seen him. I tried calling his parents again. Still nothing. Desperate, I waited outside the ER, hoping to see him. For 4 nights, I sat near the entrance, watching ambulances come and go. By the second night, boredom set in, so I brought snacks and a book. At one point, I had to use the bathroom and went inside. A security guard approached. Need directions, ma'am? I hesitated. I'm looking for Dr. David Walters. He gave me a polite but firm smile. Doctor names are confidential. If you have an appointment, check the main entrance. Frustrated, I left. But I wasn't giving up. On the 4th night, I finally saw him, walking from the parking lot to the ER. My heart pounded. I almost called his name, but he was inside before I could react. Now I knew he was back. The next step was finding a way to talk to him, to convince him to come home. A few days later, as I arrived at my building, a man in a suit stood outside, checking his phone. Diane Walters? He asked. Yes, I said warily. Who are you? Without a word, he handed me an envelope. You've been served. Then he snapped a photo of me holding it and walked away. Crap. David had filed for divorce.
In New York, a no-fault divorce only requires proof that the marriage has been irretrievably broken for at least 6 months. My attorney emailed to confirm Diane had been served. She expected her lawyer to respond soon. If Diane delayed, the court would finalize everything in about 6 months. Simple, clean, exactly how I wanted it. And then, the doorbell rang.
I did something I probably shouldn't have. I followed David home. 2 days ago, I waited outside the hospital and trailed him as he walked a few blocks to an apartment building not far from where we used to live. Now that I knew where he was, all I needed was the nerve to face him. After a few days, I finally convinced myself to go. I chose an outfit I knew he liked, skinny jeans, heels, and a white sleeveless blouse. I tied my hair in a ponytail just the way he used to prefer. To soften the approach, I brought his favorite IPA and a bottle of Chardonnay for myself. Heart pounding, I walked to his building and rang the doorbell. I pressed the buzzer for his apartment and waited. After a few rings, his voice crackled through the intercom. "Hi. David, is that you?" I asked. A pause, then confusion in his voice. "Who's this?" "It's me, Diane," I said quietly. "Your wife." Silence hung in the air. "Can I come up?" I asked after a moment. Still no response. "I just want to talk," I added, my voice softening. After what felt like forever, the buzzer sounded. I grabbed the door handle before he could change his mind. My pulse was racing as I stepped into the elevator. When I reached his door, I hesitated, then I knocked.
Hearing Diane's voice through the intercom caught me off guard. I probably should have ignored it, but instead, I buzzed her in. When she knocked, I hesitated, taking a moment to gather myself. Then I opened the door. She looked good, a little worn, but still the woman I had once called my wife. She stood there uncertain, waiting for me to decide what came next. I stepped aside. "Hi, Diane. What brings you here?" "Hi, David," she said quietly. "I wanted to talk. You've been impossible to reach, and even harder to find." In the kitchen, I spotted the wine in her bag. I grabbed a glass and she passed me the bottle. Screw cap. I poured her some. She pulled out an IPA and held it out to me. I shook my head. "No thanks. I'm on call tonight." Instead, I poured myself a Diet Coke. I gestured to the table. "Let's sit." It was time to end this.
David didn't waste time with small talk. His distant stare twisted my stomach into knots. "You scared me," I said, voice shaking. "When you called the hotel, when I found your note and ring, I didn't know what to think." I placed his wedding band on the table. He didn't touch it. "I tried talking to your family," I continued. "Your dad told me to go to hell. Maybe I deserved that. But since you left, I have been in hell." His expression didn't change. "What did you expect me to do?" His voice was sharp, controlled. "You were with Darren for months. Did you think I'd just sit there?" "It wasn't like that," I whispered. "Then what was it like?" His voice stayed calm, but his eyes burned. "I was lonely," I admitted. "You were always at the hospital. When you were home, you were exhausted. And that justified lying?" His gaze was ice. "You could have just told me you wanted out." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he asked, "Did you sign the divorce papers?" I shook my head. "No, I don't want a divorce. I want us. To be your wife. To be a family." He laughed, bitter. "You're unbelievable. We've been apart 6 months. You ended this. I'm just making it legal." "But we can fix it," I pleaded. "I don't want to fix it," he said flatly. "I've moved on. I'm not going back." "David, please." "No." He stood. "You love cheating too much. This marriage is over." I drained my wine, then kissed him, hoping to remind him of what we had. He pulled away, cold, done. "Take your ring," he said. I picked it up and left, and that's when it hit me. I'd lost him. Darren wasn't worth it. I deserved this. Time to sign the papers.
Diane tried to kiss me before she left. She thinks we can pretend nothing happened, that we can start fresh. She's out of her mind. I just need my lawyer to finalize the divorce so I can move on. I took a long shower to wash off that mess and cracked open a beer.
In Berlin, I've been busy editing hours of travel footage. Dubbing it in English and German is tough, but I'm enjoying the process. The last month flew by. I've sent David a few photos and videos from Africa. He looked good, even in the clip where he wiped out his Honda. We laughed about that one. Before we traveled together, I had my friend Ingrid's husband Nick check him out, just to be sure he wasn't hiding anything. He wasn't. But recently, curiosity got the better of me. I asked Ingrid to have Nick check on David again. I know, sneaky, but I had my reasons. A week later, Ingrid called. David's back in Albany, working in the ER. His lawyer filed for divorce, and it's almost finalized. Good, because I have news for him. But I need to settle a few things in the US first. I hope he'll be happy.
Finally, the divorce is official. Holding that paper felt like freedom. Now I can move forward. Emma keeps sending me updates. Clips of me doing dumb stuff like nearly running into cows. The cows and the bike were fine, but Emma laughed until she cried. We've talked on the phone. I told her about Diane's visit, how she wanted me back. But Diane's disrespect sealed the deal. Once I knew the full extent of her affair, there was no going back. That's why I took a break from life in the first place. Emma listened patiently, but I could tell she had something on her mind. She said she'd email me soon and hinted at an announcement. Probably about her book.
I need to tell David my news, but I'm waiting until he's fully past the Diane drama. I need his focus on me. Just a little more time, but not too much.
It's been a week since the divorce, and now I'm at Albany Airport, flying to Berlin. I need to see Emma. It's been nearly 2 months. I need to know if what we had in Africa is still there. If not, I'll figure out my next move. Doctors Without Borders is recruiting, and I'm considering it. The pay's not great, but I'll manage. I landed in Berlin, got through customs, and headed to my hotel in Alexanderplatz. After checking in, I showered, grabbed something to eat, and set out to find Emma's office. Thank God for Google Maps. At her building, I found Emma Fisher's company listed in the directory and took the elevator up. Stepping into the reception area, I approached the receptionist, who greeted me in German. Is Emma Fisher here? Could I see her, please? I asked. Her eyes widened slightly before she picked up the phone and made a quick call. After a brief, hushed conversation, she turned back to me. Emma, or someone, will be here shortly, she said, motioning toward a nearby chair. You can wait there. I sat down, glancing around the lobby. A few women passed by, casting curious glances in my direction. For a moment, I wondered if something was off. Was my fly down? I discreetly checked. Nope. Everything in order. A few minutes later, a woman approached me with a professional air. Dr. Walters? She asked. Yes, I replied, a bit surprised. Follow me, please, she said, turning briskly down the hallway. I followed her down a long hallway. That's when it hit me. I introduced myself as David Walters, not Dr. Walters. Guess they knew more about me than I thought. After a long walk, Emma appeared around the corner. A bright smile lit up her face. She ran to me, threw her arms around my neck, and kissed me. Everyone was watching. My God, David, she exclaimed. When did you get to Berlin? A few hours ago, I replied, still catching my breath. Didn't want to show up looking like a mess. I half expected her to ask why I was here, to see if what we had was still real. But Emma didn't ask. She took my hand and led me toward the editing room to show me what she'd been working on. She wore a long black skirt and a white blouse, a far cry from the motorcycle gear I was used to seeing her in, or without. My favorite memories? Seeing Emma, completely free, in every way. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't over yet. I decided to go with the flow and see where the evening led. We talked about her book and the videos she was producing, some for YouTube, most for a paid subscription on the publisher's site. Want to grab dinner? I asked, steering the conversation toward something personal. I'd like to hear about you, and I've got some things to share too. How long are you staying? She asked. 3 days, but I can extend it. Her eyes brightened. I want you to meet my family. They've heard a lot about you. That caught me off guard. Meeting her family wasn't what I expected. Sure, I replied, trying to sound casual. But first I need food, and maybe a good German beer. I'm leaving now, she said. With you. As we walked to my hotel, I asked where she lived. Not far. I have an apartment nearby, she said casually. For a second, I wondered if she had a husband back home. It wouldn't have been hard to hide that in Africa, but I pushed the thought aside and just went with it. Once inside my hotel room, Emma pulled me into a kiss. The heat between us reignited instantly. Our clothes hit the floor in seconds, and soon we were tangled in bed. Touching her felt like waking from a long sleep. I hadn't realized how much I missed her until that moment. After months of feeling stuck in Albany, I could finally breathe. She felt perfect, like everything I'd been missing. It was hard to believe I'd been haunted by my failed marriage just days ago. Now here I was with someone who made me feel alive again. I didn't want it to end. By 9 p.m., we were showered and seated downstairs in the hotel restaurant. Emma surprised me by ordering a Diet Coke. She usually preferred beer. "So," I asked, leaning forward, "why does your family want to meet me?" She smiled, setting her menu aside. I told them about our Africa trip. They're excited to meet someone from the U.S. My parents have been to Florida a few times. My aunt lives near Tampa. Emma chuckled softly. She loves the beach. Says it helps with her arthritis. She took a sip of her Coke, then added, "We can take the train to my parents tomorrow if you want." "How long's the ride?" I asked. 6 hours. "Where do they live?" "In Ulm, down south," she replied. "My dad was an engineer for Volkswagen, and my mom's an accountant. They're both retired now." I nodded, just rolling with it. Then she shifted focus to me. "So you're officially a free man," she said, locking eyes with me. I grinned. "Yep, got the paperwork to prove it." I pulled out the folded divorce papers and set them on the table. Emma glanced at them. "Congrats. How does it feel?" "Good," I said. "It was inevitable after finding out she cheated for almost 2 years." She tilted her head. "What do you want to do now?" Her question had weight. I couldn't tell if she wanted me in her life or was just curious. We shared a closeness that felt deeper than just casual. At first I thought it was a cultural thing, moving fast, but it felt like more. I didn't fully understand until later. I wasn't sure how long I'd stay in Albany. The hospital paid well, but the city held too much baggage. I needed somewhere new to explore, and Emma had definitely sparked that urge in me. I smiled. "This wanderlust?" "Your fault," she laughed. We spent the night at my hotel. The next morning we went to her apartment so she could pack. After tying up some loose ends, we grabbed a cab to the train station. I've always liked European trains. On time, easy to navigate, and no airport-level security. We settled in and watched the scenery roll by. In Ulm, her parents greeted us warmly. Emma looked a lot like her mom, the same eyes and hair, but had her dad's smile. After introductions, we headed to their house in her dad's Passat wagon. Their home was old but well-maintained. Inside, everything was modern and updated. I complimented her dad, Carl, on the craftsmanship. Mentioning my dad was a builder, Carl lit up at that. Some things are universal. Over beers, I could feel her parents sizing me up. But instead of grilling me, Carl broke the ice. "So you're American?" he asked. "Where from?" "Albany, New York," I said. "About 2.5 hours north of New York City." They nodded, but I knew more questions were coming. Emma returned with drinks, beer for Carl and me, red wine for her mom, and ice water for herself. That last one caught my attention. I started connecting the dots. To avoid their scrutiny, I asked them about themselves. Carl launched into a passionate speech about German engineering. I respected his enthusiasm. Maria, her mom, was quieter. She'd worked in accounting, and now enjoyed traveling with Carl to warmer places like Spain and Greece. Their plans sounded a lot like my parents. My folks bought a van to tour the U.S. and spoil their grandkids. They'd hoped I'd add to that grandkid count, but, well, life had other plans, or so I thought. Dinner was in the works, and Carl kept me entertained with stories about cars and German beer. Emma watched us closely, her eyes flicking between me and her dad. At some point, Carl mentioned he was the reason Emma got into motorcycles. He still had a BMW 1200 in the garage and promised to show me his collection. By the end of the evening, I felt like I'd passed a test. I expected to be put in a separate room, but to my surprise, Maria left fresh towels for both of us in the same room. When we got into bed, I decided to keep things respectful. No funny business under her parents' roof. I even kept my boxers on. Emma raised an eyebrow. "Why are you doing that?" "Well," I said, "we're at your parents' house. I don't think it's right to get undressed here." She laughed. "They've slept together without clothes all their lives. Take them off. I haven't had you around in months, and I want you." Her words lit a fire in me. I leaned in and whispered, "How long?" Emma froze. "How long?" "Yes." "How far along are you?" I asked gently. "You remember I'm a doctor, right? I know when someone's pregnant." Her face went still. "I'm pretty sure you're pregnant," I said softly. "There's a little bump. I'd guess 3, maybe 3.5 months." Emma stared at me, wide-eyed. "Oh my God." She got up, went to her bag, and pulled out a pregnancy test. She held it out. 2 blue stripes. My world shifted. I did the math. St. Louis, maybe Dakar, 3 months ago. "I saw a doctor in Berlin about a month ago," Emma whispered. "I have an ultrasound next week." I sat there, stunned. I'd come to Berlin thinking we might part as friends, holding on to memories of Africa. But this was a whole new beginning. Part of me hoped there was still something between us. And now, there was. "Hold on," I said, digging through my bag until I found the small velvet box I'd packed just in case. Back at the bed, hands slightly trembling, I opened it, revealing a simple ring. "Will you marry me?" I asked. Emma's face lit up. "Yes. Yes, yes." I hugged her gently, careful of her belly, but I knew her parents would want to hear the news. I dressed quickly and opened the door to find Maria and Carl standing there, clearly eavesdropping. I grinned. "We'll be right out." Emma and I shared the news in the living room. Maria had obviously known about the pregnancy. Mothers always do, but Carl surprised me. He wasn't fazed by Emma marrying an American. "Well, Emma," Carl chuckled, pulling me into a hug. "He's a good man. Just make sure he gets a proper motorcycle next time."
2 days later, we were back in Berlin. I wanted David with me for the ultrasound. He called his family in the hospital in Albany, sharing our news. I overheard his mom shout, "David's marrying that German girl from Africa." They were thrilled, especially about the twins. I told my publisher I'd be working from home. Then we went to the ultrasound. The doctor ran the wand over my belly. David's face shifted from focused to beaming. "We're having twins," he whispered. I burst into tears.
We married in Berlin, a small ceremony. Maria, Carl, some friends, and Emma's coworkers. After, we moved to Albany. My family was there, and Maria and Carl could visit often. I cut back on shifts at the hospital. I wanted to be home. Emma's belly grew fast. We found a 4-bedroom house near my brother's. Marcy and Emma became inseparable, decorating the nursery and prepping for the twins. When the day came, Emma gave birth to 2 healthy girls, each nearly 6 pounds. Life became a blur of feedings, diapers, and sleepless nights. I'd forgotten what rest felt like. Maria and my mom competed to be the best grandma. My dad and Carl raced to outdo each other with house projects. I didn't even try to keep up. It's funny. Just when life knocks you down, something beautiful happens. I lost my first wife to an affair. I thought she loved me, but she didn't. She hid her betrayal until it destroyed us. For a long time, I felt guilty. But it wasn't my choice to end that marriage. She made that decision the moment she cheated. Meeting Emma was pure luck. If I hadn't gotten a flat tire in Newfoundland, I might never have met her. And now, I have a wonderful wife, 2 beautiful daughters, and a future I'm excited about every day. This is the life I was meant to have.
I get the last word, as always. Not long after moving to the U.S., Marcy and I were shopping at IKEA when a woman stared at us. She clearly knew Marcy. Marcy turned to her coolly. "Hi, Diane." That was it. No pleasantries. I knew who she was. No photo needed. Diane, the woman who threw away a good man for nothing. "Hey, Marcy, how's it going?" Diane asked. I shifted slightly, letting my very pregnant belly show. She was pretty, sure, but pretty doesn't make you smart. Marcy didn't miss a beat. "Diane, this is Emma, David's wife. We're shopping for baby furniture." She paused just long enough. "She's having twins." And with that, Marcy took my hand, and we walked away. Under her breath, she muttered, "Hooker." Later, loading our purchases, Marcy told me the full story of Diane's betrayal. I already knew most of it, but hearing it from someone else made it feel more real. David's family never spoke of her. They'd erased her. That night, when David came home, we made love. I loved being without clothes with him. It always felt like the first time. I dreamed of us riding motorcycles and traveling again someday. I wasn't sure when with 2 babies, but maybe one day. David's parents even offered us their motorhome for trips with the girls.